All right, hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Tuesday, July 6th, 2021. This is your evening update on what is now Hurricane Elsa. So, the big news, obviously, earlier, the National Hurricane Center at 8 p.m. did upgrade Elsa to a hurricane. Maximum sustained winds are 75 miles an hour, not radically different from what we talked about at 2 p.m. this afternoon, but that strengthening trend has continued throughout the afternoon and evening hours, and Elsa has a sort of partial eye wall going on now and is now a hurricane and should landfall as such in the Big Bend of Florida, just north of Tampa here, in about 10-12 hours. So let's go ahead and catch you up on the latest in case you didn't get the video earlier. A quick recap. Again, 8 p.m. advisory, 75-mile-an-hour winds. She's moving to the north at 14 miles an hour. Currently, she's centered about 100 miles to the south of Tampa Bay. Your warnings have not significantly changed. A tropical storm warning is in effect from Flamingo, which is the southern tip of West Florida, all the way up to the Ohlone River, which is in the northern Big Bend area. You also have a hurricane warning in effect from Edgemont Key, which is at the entrance to Tampa Bay, up to the Steinhatchee River and more of the central part of the Big Bend, which has replaced the tropical storm warning. Those have been discontinued for the Keys, but the dry Tortugas have them for a few more hours. Tropical storm warning also in effect for the St. Mary's River region of southeast Georgia, and then tropical storm watch up from that point to about South Santee River in South Carolina. I do anticipate those watches to extend a little bit further into parts of North Carolina at the 11 p.m. advisory, and a couple more of these probably become tropical storm warnings. So, Ted Bay radar kind of shows us the story the last few hours, and Elsa has wrapped up this little partial eye wall. So, look at that. The storm has been trying to do this all day, and every time she got to about this point in the eye, the storms would fall apart and get blown back off by the shear, and they couldn't really do it. Well, over the last few hours, Elsa really kind of got herself together and really gave it the old college try, and she made what was a partial eye wall. Now, the back half of this eye wall is pretty rough, and that is still because of that southwest wind shear. When the storms get wrapping around, they just really can't maintain them. They kind of get blown off, and it sort of makes this sort of half moon sort of shape going on to it. There's some pretty nasty squally weather in this band, and this little band here is about where you're seeing those hurricane force winds. We can show you this on the visible satellite as the sun sets. You'll see here in the first couple frames, this is how it looked earlier today. You still had that partially exposed low level center, and all the thunderstorm activity was over here. So you kind of had your centers of circulation, low level here, and then upper level here. So you had this misalignment. And if you watch the satellite loop, you'll see her kind of suck up that low level center, and now it's completely covered up by clouds. And it looks like the low and mid level centers are much better aligned, which means a healthier storm, and the more likely she is to intensify. So despite the continuing southwest wind shear, which appears to be weakening just a little bit, there's still some of it, but it looks like in these northern Gulf clouds, you can see moving out this way that there's less resistance than there was earlier. So I think the wind shear is relaxing just a little bit, and it's keeping Elsa a little bit healthier than maybe was anticipated. But if you've been following along, we've been saying that a hurricane landfall was still very possible. And again, the difference in a 65 and an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane isn't night and day. I want to show you this graphic. This is from Colorado State University. This is a cool map. It shows you the storm and kind of how the wind fields are laid out. Make sure this is updated. Yeah, so I want to explain real quick. People get these things confused. When we talk about hurricanes, we say, okay, she's a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane now. A lot of people think that, okay, those winds are occurring all through the storm, and she's got 75-mile-an-hour winds anywhere she hits. And that's really not the case. We've gotten to where we really hyper analyze these things, and our technology is so good we can see such small changes with the hurricane hunter data and high resolution satellites and modern radars. And what's likely occurring is this. So you see these winds in yellow. These are tropical storm force winds. These extend out about 90 to 100 miles from the center in the best case, definitely on the east side of the storm. Notice how the center is right here, so the weight is definitely more to the east than it is to the west. But those are those tropical storm force winds. Those are those, 30, 40 mile an hour winds sustained, gusting 55 or so. Those are those kind of winds. And then in the small pocket here within those winds, you have a stronger patch of winds, which are 50 knot winds. Those are, sustained winds of around 50 to 60 miles an hour with gusts around, say, 70, kind of like what the Florida Keys experienced earlier today as Elsa passed by. And then within that, there's a little sliver now, which is graphics a few hours old. It's not going to show the hurricane winds, but there's a sliver right about here that's going to pop up in red, and that'll be the hurricane force winds. So that's it. That's little 20-mile sliver is all really the hurricane force winds are on the satellite, or I'm sorry, on the radar. The hurricane force winds are pretty much occurring right here at most, probably where those reds are. That's it. So don't think like, oh, well, I live over here and now she's a hurricane, so I'm getting a hurricane. But also don't forget that when you see a forecast and your local weatherman says, hey, we're expecting 45-mile wind gusts, please treat that as such because that's still a significant wind gust. People tend to overestimate the storms based off the center and the little swath of the center where the winds are the strongest. But then they kind of forget that even strong tropical storm force winds can do some significant damage. They can take down trees, especially wet trees and wet soil like Florida's had because it's rained every day for a month before the storm showed up. And also, cause power outages and the such. And when you catch a 50, 60-mile-an-hour wind gust, you're going to go, oh, wow, that's what that looks like because you don't see it every day. So we kind of have this problem where the messaging gets a little confusing. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the forecast tonight. Yes, she's a hurricane. Yes, it's going to suck more for Tampa Bay, Horseshoe Beach, Steinhatchee than it may have if she was only a 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm and she was kind of battered and weakening. But it does not radically change forecasts for folks away from the coast where she comes ashore. So just keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and talk about the impacts. We'll go ahead and back this model up. This is the NAM-NES simulated radar. This is how one model thinks it'll look through the rest of the evening. So as a current recap, you can see, we'll back up a little bit further. Current satellite and radar, you can see Tampa right here. The rain shield of the outer bands are just now getting into Tampa with a few feeder bands trying to push further north. Some drier air over northern Florida, it looks like, keeping it in check so far, but that'll go downhill by tomorrow. But right now, so Tampa Bay is about where she is tonight. You can see that matches up pretty well here with the model. And then over the next few hours, you see how the conditions really get rough in Tampa. Their worst weather is going to be in the next 10, 12 hours. Conditions will not be pretty, especially as you see those reds and whatnot as they approach. That's where going to be the nastiest winds are. This model carries her a bit further north and landfalls her up here, like the northern end of Steinhatchee. So I might be further south than that, but it's a rough idea. But as we back it up here, Tampa Bay gets it, and about this time, this is valid overnight. This is after midnight, about 4 o'clock in the morning. Tampa Bay still getting it pretty good. And then you can see those outer bands starting to reach the northeast Florida area and northern central Florida area. And then as I go a little bit further, she's making landfall by about, mid-morning tomorrow in the Big Bend. It could be an hour or two before this. I think, 7, 8 a.m. is probably when she'll come ashore. And heavier weather stretching into northern Florida, and you have some of the severe weather leftovers. This little severe tail can always be nasty, so don't let your guard down in South Florida, the storm's well north of you. And then you see how she spreads into southeast Georgia. Probably gonna be some heavier rain in southeast Georgia than they're expecting for sure. And then she moves into the Carolinas by overnight hours Wednesday into Thursday, and then makes her trek through the Carolinas on Thursday and out to sea by Friday. So that's kind of how that looks. Storm surge, as we've talked about, I think the Tampa Bay forecast is too low. I think the upgrade to a hurricane is going to necessitate this to come up. I would put it at 5 to 7 feet of full water rise and surge. I think it's going to be pretty nasty in the Tampa Bay area, especially if she hugs a little closer and just kind of comes in like this instead of that last model I showed you where she comes in a bit further north. That can be a big difference. But I don't like a south-facing bay and the sort of V the storm is making with the coast and pushing that water. And now you have hurricane force wind gusts. It's not good news. Tampa Bay is going to be pretty rough. Would not want to be there. 3 to 5 foot also further north where she comes ashore. 2 to 4 feet elsewhere. That's definitely significant and should be respected. Hopefully, if you're at the immediate coast or Tampa Bay especially, you're getting out of there and doing what you got to do. Rainfall still to come, still about 3 to 6 inches for most of the West Florida coastline. Totals are coming down for South Florida because, of course, the storm has moved out of there. Still expecting another inch or two for Southeast Florida, but they're going to stay out of the tropical storm force winds and they're going to stay out of the worst of her rains. Further north and Northeast Florida, North Central Florida, solid 2 to 4 inches, probably about 4 to 6 closer to North Central Florida. And also see how much rain is. Look at this rain pocket here in Southeast Georgia and maybe like northwest, of the Northeast Florida area, kind of right around the little dip here. I forgot the name of the national forest, but there's a national forest right there, I promise. But rainfall total is a little higher. There's like a frontal boundary sort of hanging out, and they've already had some pretty heavy rain today and tonight, and that'll continue before Elsa even really shows up. So their total is probably closer to 4 to 6. And again, like I've been saying in these videos, if you hear 2 to 4, think maximum of 8. If you hear 4 to 6, think a maximum of a foot. It just tropical storms like to just pick somebody and just dump on them way more than their neighbor for whatever reason. And you can get some really unfortunate situations where you get almost double what the widespread forecast is for rainfall. So this, 2 to 4 doesn't sound like a lot of rain, but then you get it in a short time and then you get a bunch of extra on top of that. You can definitely get flash flooding. Weather Prediction Center still definitely expects flash flooding. They carry moderate risk for the West Florida coast tonight, and then southeast Georgia and southeast South Carolina on Wednesday, and then slight risk for Thursday for North Carolina. So, but anywhere in Florida the next day or two, excessive rainfall could fall, leading to localized flash flooding. And also, creeks and rivers will be at minor to moderate flood stages in a lot of the areas. Maybe not so much in the Carolinas where it's been a little drier, but definitely in Florida is going to see creek and river rises, no doubt about it. Wind gust forecast model still not really showing you kind of how I want to show you. The GFS is way too low. Euro's weird and makes the landfall way north, and I don't like them. But I do like the National Digital Forecast Database. This is from the National Weather Service, and I want to specifically show you real quick Tampa Bay, where they're showing some hurricane force wind gusts, especially into the bay. And this isn't like some computer model's guess. This is a pretty accurate product once you get close into the time. And there's going to be some nasty wind gusts from about that hurricane warning area where Edgemont Key is all the way up to about Steinhatchee, where the landfall is. This section of Florida's coast is going to get smacked with some pretty nasty wind gusts, and there's going to be some winds screaming off the water into Tampa Bay because the storm's oriented winds are going to be with that bay. So you're going to have those winds coming in right off the water, and it's going to be a rough night in Tampa. I've said it a couple of times, but I'll say it again. And the rest of the area looks pretty good. I mean, you're talking about 50, 60 possible around like Gainesville, Lake City, North Central Florida area, Northeast Florida, like we've been saying, 35 to 45 miles an hour. Pretty good call, but these more northern areas in Southeast Georgia could probably still get them pretty good. Solid 40, 50 mile an hour wind gusts have been up there along with that heavy rain. And you can see here the Carolinas is going to relax a lot, but a couple wind gusts around tropical storm force still likely through South and even North Carolina as she tracks through, even if she's a tropical depression at that point. And Southeast Florida, you're not really getting in on the fun. You're going to stay below tropical storm force, but you'll still have the onshore gusty winds. And I just want to leave you, the Storm Prediction Center is still expecting a possibility of tornadoes. A tornado watch is in effect tonight for the South Florida and Central Florida regions, and this will extend to North Florida tonight or tomorrow morning. So definitely just be waiting on that because it's coming, no doubt about it. And they do carry the highest risk for tornadoes along the western side of Florida, obviously, that 5% hatching, but definitely the next couple of days, tornadoes are definitely possible through, South Florida, West Florida, North Florida, and into parts of South Carolina and Georgia near the coast, and will be in North Carolina as well on Thursday. So not the worst thing ever, but definitely keep that in mind. So that's what I got for you guys this evening on Elsa. We're going to keep tracking it on the page, on Redbeard's weather page, and elsewhere. Maybe do one more video for YouTube. We'll see how the evening advisories play out. I'll probably be up most of the night, and as long as I don't lose power in Jacksonville, I will be keeping the updates rolling through the day tomorrow and Thursday. So stay tuned, guys. What I got for you now. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.